Teachers and school administrators, what's the most blatant example of both sides you've used to avoid dealing with a clear case of bullying? I was 14 when I finally snapped. The principal's office felt like a cage, the air thick with tension. Across the polished desk sat Ms. Albright, her expression a careful blend of concern and thinly veiled irritation. Next to her, Brett, my personal tormentor for the last 2 years, looked smug, a tiny bandage on his forehead. His mom, Mrs. Davies, sat rigidly beside him, glaring at me like I'd personally offended her ancestry. My dad, quiet but radiating an intense calm, was next to me. Ms. Albright cleared her throat. Alex, we have a serious situation here. Brett alleges you intentionally struck him with a cafeteria tray. She made it sound like I wielded a medieval shield. My dad's voice was steady. And what's your son's side of the story, Alex? I looked at him, then at Ms. Albright. He cornered me in the lunch line again, called me names, pushed me, said he was going to accidentally trip me on the way to my table, like he did last week, and promised to spill my food all over me. My voice was barely a whisper. I turned around with my tray to try and get past him, and he walked right into it. Mrs. Davies scoffed. Walked into it? My son has a gash. He used a weapon. Dad turned to Ms. Albright. Ms. Albright, are there security cameras in that part of the cafeteria? She fidgeted. Well, not that specific corner, no. It's a bit of a blind spot. Convenient, Dad murmured, then pressed on. What about witnesses? Reliable ones, not just Brett's friends. We have statements from several students who saw Alex strike Brett, she said, avoiding eye contact. They saw the end of it, Dad corrected, his voice hardening slightly. They didn't see the weeks, the months leading up to it, did they? This is the 4th time this semester we've had to call about Brett's behavior towards Alex. The constant verbal abuse, the tripping, the pushing in the halls, the stolen lunches. Alex came home last month with a torn shirt and a bruised rib from being shoved into a locker. Where were those cameras then? Where were these witnesses then? Mrs. Davies interjected. That's completely different. My son didn't use a weapon. Your son did. Dad leaned forward, his gaze fixed on her. A plastic lunch tray, Mrs. Davies? After your son has physically assaulted mine, emotionally abused him, and made his life a misery for 2 years? Where was your concern when my son was coming home in tears, or with actual injuries? Where was the school's intervention when we repeatedly reported Brett's bullying? Ms. Albright tried to mediate. Now, Mr. Jensen, boys can be rough sometimes. We try to teach them to resolve conflicts peacefully. Dad's voice dropped, becoming dangerously low. Boys can be rough? My son has been systematically tormented by yours, and your school has done nothing but issue warnings that Brett clearly ignored. Alex finally defended himself after being completely failed by this institution. So let's be very clear. He stood up, towering over the desk. Either you acknowledge the pattern of bullying, drop any disciplinary action against Alex, and implement a concrete plan to ensure Brett stops, or we'll be taking this to the district. And then we'll be pressing charges against Brett for assault. A pattern of assault, in fact. And we'll see how boys will be rough plays out in a courtroom. Ms. Albright's face went pale. Now, Mr. Jensen, let's not be hasty. Dad didn't budge. He looked at me, a flicker of pride in his eyes. Get your bag, Alex. We're leaving. We walked out of that office together. There was no suspension, no mark on my record. The school finally put Brett on an individualized behavior plan, and his parents were forced to attend counseling with him. Taught me that sometimes you have to find someone brave enough to stand up for you, and that pushing back against a broken system isn't just about winning. It's about demanding justice.